Neville Goddard, 1956 lectures. The Four Mighty Ones. June 17th, 1956. This morning's subject is the Four Mighty Ones. The history of humanity is little else than a long struggle with this infinite riddle, the riddle of the Four Mighty Ones. When Origen, one of the early church fathers, was asked, why are there four gospels? Why not one? He answered and said, because there are four quarters of the heavens, north, south, east, and west, and therefore four quarters of the human soul. The Bible speaks of this riddle, which we will quote from the book of Proverbs, and I will tell you the promise is made to the individual and to the nation who can answer or unriddle the riddle. It is veiled throughout from Genesis to the book of Revelations, the four rivers, the four horsemen, the four creatures around the throne of God, the four men loose and walking in the fire, and the form of the fourth was like the Son of God, and they parted his raiment into four parts, and throughout they speak of the four. But man cannot seem to unriddle the riddle. This morning I hope to do it, and if I do it to your satisfaction so you walk in it, then certain things should happen to you. Now let us see what should happen to us. First, let me quote the riddle. It's from the 30th chapter of the book of Proverbs. Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is his son's name? Canst thou tell? For that is the riddle. Can we tell it? Do we know the name of the one who did it? Do we know the son's name and follow it closely? The first is spirit, the second is water, the third is earth. That is the question asked. The first one is about the wind. Well, the wind in all languages, in all ages, has been used as a synonym for spirit, the breath. He speaks of water second. The mystic knows water in the Bible and all scriptures symbolized psychological truth. The ideas that men entertain as truth, either true or false, if he accepts it and consents to it, he weaves this into a garment, so he wonders who has actually gathered or bound the waters in a garment. And the third, who has established all ends of the earth? Who made it fixed? Who could take this liquid state that is only a moving state that is unseen and objectify it, actually establish a something that is solidly real and make it to others a fact? Do you know the name? What is his name, and what is his son's name? Canst thou tell? Now let us turn to the promises. I will set him on high because he hath known my name, which you read in the 91st Psalm, which all of us love to recite. I will set him on high. When I am set on high, does it mean I am made a king, a president, a dictator, a great giant of industry? It hasn't a thing to do with such exalted positions on earth, for the real journey of a man is up the ladder of awareness, ever increasing awareness, an awareness of objects of increasing significance. But I am set on high because I know the name. A bird will not be merely a feathered creature. A bird will be to me, as it was to Blake, simply a wonderful delight, a heavenly delight, bringing me a message. Birds will talk to me, not as you understand language, but their very flight will reveal to me God's intent. They will speak to me, not only in trees, birds. Everything in the world is the language of God. When man is lifted up, they cease to be objects. They are expressions of meaning. As a book is lifted up in consciousness from merely an object in space to a series of marks on paper, to finally an expression of meaning, as I ascend in consciousness, I lift an object. But if I am lifted up because I know the name, then every object in space ceases to be objects. They have meaning and they are expressing meaning. So I can read the open book of God. A tree now becomes a message. Birds in flight. Why 2 and not 3? Or why 3 and not 10? Why in the form in which they did fly? There is no accident. Everything is the unfolding pages of God's book to the man who is set on high because he knows the name. The name then becomes, we are told, a strong tower, and the righteous runneth into it and is saved. Now let us take one more promise, and you answer whether nations know the name. If our priests and our rabbis and our leaders, who should know the name, really know the name, for this is the promise that the prophet gives us in the book of Micah, all the people will walk, everyone, in the name of his God, and we will all walk in the name of the Lord our God. And in that day, all the nations will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and no nation shall lift a sword against a nation, and they shall learn war no more. And the history of humanity has been the history of war and crime, and these words were penned hundreds and hundreds of years before our era. Hundreds of years BC. Only the individual has found the name and become one who took his one sword and turned it into a plowshare. He escaped from the turmoil, the individual mystic, the individually awakened man or woman who found the name. In the midst of the struggle, he goes in and finds a savior in the name. It is a strong tower to him, and now he goes in and he rests. He is lifted up on high, and he sees the unfolding of the times. Now, if nations really knew it, if the word uttered by the priests really was the name, if the rabbi pronouncing the so-called holy word was the name, we would not have war. So the name as sounded by the priesthoods of the world cannot be the name. So what is the name? Let us go back to the riddle. Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? What imagery? What is the fist? The fist is the symbol of the first letter of the great mystery name of God. The first is Jod, J-O-D. Now, what is a fist? The hand is one organ of the human body that sets him completely apart from the whole of creation. So it begins the name of God. For without a hand, if I were simply an Einstein multiplied by the nth number, I would only be a smart monkey. I could not build. I could not fashion. I could not mold. I could not create. I could have all the ideas in the world, but without a hand, I would not be a creator. So here, that very first question asked is about the creative being. For the wind is spirit. I am speaking now of the creative spirit. And so it puts us into the form of a fist. Who has taken it and gathered all the wind in its fist? So we find the first letter, that is, in the language of the mystic, to be aware. Can you conceive of being any place in this world and not being aware? You may not know who you are. You may not know where you are. You may suffer from total amnesia, but you can never, in eternity, not know that you are. It's the one thing of which man is sure. I am. You will always know I am. There is no not knowing I am, no matter what. He knows that he is, and he doesn't know who he is, and where he is, and what he is, but he cannot stop knowing that he is. So that is the very first question asked. That creative spirit, which is Yod, which is simply being aware. The second one now, who bound the waters in a garment? When I speak of garments in the scriptures, they symbolize what the mind wears. When a man is clothed in soft raiment, we are told he is in the king's house and the kingdom is within. He does not have teachings concerning external life. When a man comes clothed in camel's hair or a leather girdle, these are made from external objects, made from skin, made from hair, the most external thing on a man. So that's man's teaching. So that man's teaching is represented by external things. Therefore, he speaks externally. He does not speak of the kingdom within. He speaks of the things without that man should do. You have two coats. Give one to one who has not any. You have more than you can eat? ? Give some to one who is hungry. But when one comes wearing soft raiment, he doesn't tell you anything to do on the outside, for he is now clothed with the clothing of the king. And the king is in the kingdom, and the kingdom is within. So we speak now of a garment. A garment simply represents the intelligence of the individual or what the individual has accepted as true. Now, where we speak of water, he gathers water into a garment, and water is psychological truth. Now, who can take a mere assumption and gather it into something that is altogether real to him, that no one sees, as you would take, say, the cloth and gather it and form it? And then the third one, who can solidify it? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? Go back to the name. We found that the hand was Yod, and the second letter in the great creative power, known as Yod-He-Vav-He, is He. He is symbolized as a window. The window of the man is his mind. With my mind, I see. With my imagination, I see in fashion, so I will now gather in my imagination what I want to be in this world. So, I will gather it without the aid of any external force. When I see clearly in my mind's eye what I would like to be, I have gathered this state into a garment. Now, how to solidify it? What is the third letter in the name, this mystery name? The third letter is Vav. And Vav is symbolized as a nail. To us, that means having your desire in your focus, and you're aimed right at it. You're nailing your focus. You're nailing it as you would nail it into your eye. All you see is that. And everything, if it doesn't fit, out, gone, off, history. The third letter Vav, and Vav is symbolized as a nail. A nail binds together. It joins things together. So I can stand here and first I am aware, just simply aware. Then I become aware of something. And I become very discriminating, very selective. There are numberless things of which I am aware, but I need not single out one to become identified with it, but I will simply let them all pass through the mind, as it were. Then I will hold upon one, I will arrest one. The kind of man that I would like to be, well, I will fashion that into a garment. The next step is now bringing it into solidity, which is the Vav. But how do I apply the name to the point where I can use the Vav in my name? I will assume that I am that man. When I walk in the assumption, I am walking in his name. We are told in this state, all will walk in the name of his God. I have found the name, found it within myself as, first, my awareness, my ability to become aware of something, my ability to become not only aware of it, but to become aware of being it. So I walk as though I am the man that I want to be. So I solidify it. And the last letter only bears witness of the internal imagery, for the last letter is another He. So there are two He's in the name, Yod and Vav. They're in the name, a Yod and a Vav. You cannot sound it. Jehovah is not the name. Roughly translated, it is I am. But you have to get to tear it apart and know what you mean by I am For to say, go and tell them I am, has sent you unto them. When I go to Israel and they ask me who sent you, what is your thought? Just say, I am, has sent me unto you, and then complete it and tell them, I am that I am. What does it mean? I am that, question mark. Yes, that is as it is because I am as I am. Were I different, that would be different. That would have to be different. So I am that. So I am that. That mirrors the being that I am. For what I see in the world, for what I see the world to be is a measure of my own level of consciousness. For whatever it is seen to be is a direct index to the level of consciousness of the observer of the world. It's not the world. I am that. I really am. And that could not be other than what it is while I remain as I am. There's so much truth in this one symbol you're pointing out, and this me, myself, and I is what you're pointing at throughout. Simple. The slightest change in my level of consciousness, the slightest change in the feeling of I am this, results in a corresponding change in that, which is the world round about me. Let me now desire peace and actually walk in the name of peace, that there is peace in my world, and I will look upon a world and I will see peace where others see conflict. For I am only seeing that at all times. So what is my authority? My authority is, I am has sent me unto you. And I am that I am. Do I know it? If I know it, I will never complain. If I broke my neck, I would know you could not have done it unto me. I did it unto myself. If I find myself in any state in the world, I could not complain, for I have found the law. I have found the name by which all these things are gathered together. All the creative spirit in the world is gathered in the name, and the name is I am. But the name must be torn apart and be shown as four mighty ones, and not just the single. It is all one, but there are four distinct functions of the one. There are not four fingers or four separate beings living in man. God is one, and his name is one. But there are four distinct functions, and you can call them the four Gospels. Call them the four garments that he wore. Call them the four rivers flowing out of Eden. Call them the four creatures surrounding the great throne of God. Call them four, but understand what you mean by the four. So when you walk the earth, can you walk in his name? If I can walk in his name, then I know what built the world, what keeps it sustained and establishes every end of this fabulous, wonderful universe. It is the name, and the name is simply I am. It is not Jehovah. It is not Christ Jesus. It isn't the Lord. It's not a thing you utter. It's a thing you keep in the silence of the heart. Because you know you are, and you don't have to affirm I am in order to be. You simply know that you are. And the one sure thing in this world that everyone knows, he knows that he is. But he doesn't know sometimes who he is. He doesn't know sometimes where he is, and sometimes he doesn't know what he is, but at all times he knows that he is. That is the one deep conviction in the heart of every man. So he walks in that, but he has to tear it apart and get understanding of the four mighty ones within him, given to us in a symbolical way in the Yod, He, Vav, He. Those not understanding it within themselves treat it so sacredly, they will even cover the name as they unfold the scroll to read it. Have you ever gone to these wonderful churches and seen them reading a scroll that man himself wrote For some rabbi wrote that down. Yet when it comes to read it, he will cover it, because he must not look upon the name of God. It's a holy name. It's not on paper. It's not on the scroll. He can't even utter it. It's within him as his awareness, his ability to become aware of things, his ability to become aware of being, the state of which formerly he was only aware of. And he walks as it, and then he objectifies it, and it becomes that. So I am that I am. So when a world is described from observation, it is always as described, revealing the level of consciousness of the describing being, obviously. You can only see that which you are. It's not the world. That changes automatically. If I, in one little way, change within myself, the whole world changes. Now today, test it. Test the name. He said, I have kept everything you gave me in your name, and your name and my name are one. We have the same name. So when you spell the Son's name, strangely enough, you start off Yod, He, Vav. When you spell Jesus in Hebrew, it begins Yod, He, Vav. You don't have to go further. That is the creative power, to be aware of, and to be aware of being, the state decided on, and then, but it's not Jesus. You don't sound Jesus. It's simply in being's own heart. That's the name. Now, the day we really believe it and are bold enough to walk in that name, there will be peace in the world. If we turn on the outside to an external God, there will be war in the world. For you have denied me, and when you deny the real God, there is confusion and conflict in the world. So any man who turns to a power outside of himself and bows before it as some sacred relic or some sacred object, or in any other way turns to it, he worships idols. For the living God is within you. Ye are the temple of the living God. He's not outside. And to look on the outside is to be led astray. And when you are led astray, you are led into confusion, and nothing but confusion would result. And therefore conflict and war. Don't forget to be reminded, you have a temple right here. You are the temple. His temple. When a man finds the name and answers the riddle, he is set on high. I can promise you a thrill beyond your wildest dreams when you begin to toy with it and test it. And if you are lifted up even one little level beyond where you now stand, so meaning begins to reveal itself, a world of meaning. There isn't a thing in the world without meaning. There is no accident. Not one little thing in the world is without significance. And when you lift in consciousness to the level of meaning, where things take on greater and greater significance, what a world into which man then rises. So the whole thing begins in that 4th verse of the 30th chapter of the book of Proverbs. He asked first, who hath ascended into heaven, and who hath descended? Then he puts the riddle, and the same being that descended is the one that first ascended. And the one that ascended was the one that descended. So this is the great ladder of life, the ladder of consciousness on which the individual descends here to discover his own being, the 4 mighty ones within him. And when he finds himself completely shut out from that knowledge, and he starts the conflict within himself and discovers within himself the cause of all the phenomena of the world, then he starts to ascend. And the same being that is going to ascend is the one that descended in consciousness to the level of complete and utter confusion. You took the stairs down, and you'll take the stairs up. Now today, make it practical. As we did in the second chapter of my latest book, I treated it as a drama, and the four mighty ones in you play with it. Call yourself a producer. You're going to produce a play. And the producer in man only suggests the theme. He goes no further. Wouldn't it be wonderful? And you name it. Wouldn't it be wonderful? And you name it. Were I, and you name it. Successful, happy, and you name a certain state. But you go no further as the Yod. He only suggests the spirit, for he just takes the wind, and that he binds in his fist. He only recommends the motive, the little theme. The second one now in man that works out that theme is the author. And the author is man's wonderful inner creative power that can take the theme of success and work out the last scene, which implies the theme is realized. What would I do were I successful? What would I see? What would I say? How would I act? Well, then construct one little theme or little scene which implies the fulfillment of my desire. That is now the second mighty one's work. The third mighty one's work is man in man. The third mighty one's work in man is the director. The director in man is man's controlled attention, so that my attention must be completely absorbed in the single idea. You must be completely directed at your aim. You must know your desire. You must have a desire to focus on and know that one thing above all things to be your aim. Shut off the noise. The director in man is man's controlled attention, so that my attention must be completely absorbed in the single idea, the idea which implies the fulfillment of my wish. You're at the end. Now, the fourth one is the one whose form is like unto the Son of God. Now, who is the fourth one in man that will now do it? Man's imagination. Man's real being is a splendid imagination. An imagination has form, but man does not understand it, and man doesn't believe it. But the real being is imagination. It can be anything in this world, and so he puts himself through the paces by simply inwardly enacting the drama that he himself has constructed. And whatever it would be that he has constructed, which drama implies the fulfillment of his theme. He inwardly acts it over and over and over again until it takes on the tones of reality. When inwardly he feels natural, just a feeling of it feels natural, in the part that in which he is now self-rehearsed, the curtain will rise and we'll see it there. He will cast the inner drama on the screen of space, and he will see moving on the screen of space all the characters necessary to complete the play. Automatons will step forward, and bridge of incidents will happen automatically. They just come out of everywhere. You might as well be hearing oompa, oompa, doopity-doo. He doesn't have to consciously direct one of them. They become relevant to his theme. And because they are relevant, they are drawn into the drama without their knowledge, without their consent. Any change in the drama must take place within him and not them. So he never appeals to one on the outside to change. He leaves them just as they are and rewrites the play within himself and changes the end. Rewrites happen all the time. As he changes the end, the whole cast are cast in different roles and have moved back into his world to complete his play. So the four mighty ones in man must be likened to the producer, the author, the director, and the actor. The four most important members in the production of a play, and this is a play. The whole vast world is a play. This is a stage. But this actual movement and the actual drama is not taking place out there. It has been conceived, dramatized, rehearsed, and completely enacted elsewhere. When you see it here, it is as much a screen as when you see a picture on this screen later on today. You cannot appeal to the actors to change. They cannot even hear you. Any change in the script must take place where it first originated, not here. This is only a screen. So as Blake said, all that you behold, though it appears without, it is within, in your imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. So when you find the four mighty ones, you have found the name, and when you find the name, you will be set on high. You will run into it like a strong tower and be saved, and there will be peace in your world. If a nation finds it, there will be complete peace in the world. If the individual finds it, it is peace in his world through the whole vast world, though if the individual finds it, it is peace in his world, though the whole vast world rages. In his world, there shall be peace. Not a thing will touch him. For he has found the name. And the purpose of this whole vast journey is to find the name and the Son's name. If I find the Father's name, his name is just like mine, so I have found my name. And the name ceases then to be Neville. It ceases to be John, to be Mary, but you never utter it. It is your sacred trust. You tell it to no one. You keep everything in the name, but you don't tell it. In other words, you will call yourself by some other tag, but the real name is covered from sight because you, yourself, cover it. You walk in the name. Now you can try it and see if I have told you the truth this morning. See if you cannot conceive of things today and identify yourself with it. Remain faithful to that association and see if that association will not result in a corresponding state in the outer world. Boldly assume that you are the one that you want to be. Remain faithful to the assumption and see if it will not establish itself and become hardened into fact, and you will know then the one who really establishes all the ends of the earth. For your earth will be anchored down and bearing witness of the man, the woman that you have conceived yourself to be. Then you will be free of the greatest tyranny in the world. And the greatest tyranny in the world is the belief in a secondary cause. There is no second cause. There is only first cause. And the cause of everything is the name. But when you don't know it, well then, you blame another, and I cannot conceive of a greater tyranny than the belief in a second cause. Take a look around. If you think it's happening outside of you and it's happening to you, that is lost. That's not a fault. It's because of what the discovery of what you're going to discover here in this one lecture, and you try it. There's only one God expressing himself as four mighty ones within the individual. So think now of your personality as something that is informed by this mighty selfhood, but informed by it. in respect to its level of consciousness in varying degrees. On one level, I am informed as to the language of birds. On another level, the language of trees. And on another level, the language of the motion of clouds. Every little formed cloud is telling me something. Every little ripple is telling me something. On a certain level, the language is revealed. On a lower level, it is simply an object moving in space. Lift up the object only, any object, and it takes on increasing significance. And what a thrill when man so lifts himself that everything is talking and telling him of the kingdom within himself, that not one little thing is by accident. That the bird that seemingly is wild and simply lit in your yard just for the moment, on its way south or north, did not by accident light. It brought a message. And every little thing in the world is telling you something when you rise in consciousness. And you rise in consciousness the day you find the name and walk in it, for I will set him on high because he has found my name. He knows my name. The only reason for the lifting up, was the knowledge of the name. So you take this morning's drama, enact it within yourself, and see if you yourself cannot prove to your own satisfaction you have found the name by changes in consciousness, not only here, but your dreams will change, your visions will change, everything will change. For you have changed. You have changed. And the success, or rather the change, or the cause of all change, is you. No other cause. If you change, everything will change. And now my time is up. Neville Goddard, the Four Mighty Ones. Wow. Whoo. There were some really amazing pieces in here, and I really liked the crown of the king. This piece here, because it coincided with the vision, one of my visions, which I'm going to make a separate video on shortly. He is now clothed with the clothing of the king, and the king is in the kingdom, and the kingdom is within. So we speak now of a garment, and the garment simply represents the intelligence of the individual, or what the individual has accepted as true. When I had that vision of myself in the boxing ring, I came into consciousness, and my arms were already in the air with boxing gloves on, and this crown, I saw a crown literally develop right on my head. And that's what that vision was that I had in that class. I had that vision. I had the vision where I was to go and win a race, and passing everybody. It was a contract with these three pillars, these three personalities. And then I also had the out of body where I saw the birth scene, and then I became in the birth scene, catching the swaddled baby and seeing it in awe. All three of those. I'm going to make a video on that, but what I didn't mention in the previous video recently was that the crown was there. So I came across the classes, and I want to try and clip those pieces out where I describe my experiences and make a video focused on that, because I believe that we don't realize, this is 2025, this is March, we're in the middle of March, and today is, I think, March 13th, March 14th today. These experiences I had were 1 year ago, in about the same time. They were in March, approximately. 2 of them were in March, and maybe one other in February of 2024. I didn't know what to chalk them up as, except that they were separate experiences. But now then I come across that lecture I just previously read, and it put them all together just perfectly. So I want to make a video and try and describe that, so it shows how this promise aspects, how it unveils. And when you have these kinds of things that Neville's describing, you at least know what to chalk them up as. All right, great lecture, the Four Mighty Ones. Woo-wee, what a good one. Okay, we're going to see you in the next one. Neville Goddard, 1956 lectures. By Water and by Blood. June 24th, 1956. My subject this morning is taken from the first epistle of John. Now, these 21 letters, or as we call them, epistles, are not really addressed to individuals or groups. They are mysteries, as is the entire Bible. Whether the Bible in the Old Testament tells the story in the form of history, or whether they tell it in the form of a parable, or whether in the form of a letter, they are all revelations of the mind of God expressed in symbolism. Now, I do not claim that I can give you an exhaustive interpretation of any single story of the Bible because they are revelations of the mind of the infinite. No single interpretation could ever be exhaustive. On one level, it may be true, and then you and I expand in consciousness, and we reread the letter and see it differently. And a further expansion in consciousness causes us, even when we reread it for the 50th time, to still see the letter in a different light. So in this morning's interpretation, I will try to keep it on a level that is most practical. When I was a kid, I used to want to watch a movie again, and my mom would tell me, I don't want to watch that again. We already saw it. And I'm like, no, we're not going to see the same movie. It's going to be different. She didn't understand my perspective, and I did not understand her perspective. We are told in the 1 John 5, this is he that came by water and blood, even Jesus Christ. This is he that came by water and blood, even Jesus Christ, not by water only, but by water and blood. So these are symbols of birth. Every natural birth in the world is accompanied by the flowing of water and blood. It's trying to tell the individual of a certain mystery of birth. But he uses the words Christ Jesus, and that is the symbol of a truly mysterious birth, something out of nothing. That is the mystery out of death, life. Man cannot conceive it. How can something alive come out of that which is dead? How can something come out of nothing? Man accepts it in the mineral world, for he sees, if he goes back far enough in time, he could push the mystery in some remote past. He will accept the fact that sometime in a way not known to modern science, out of non-organic substance came organism. He will call it by some little tiny name, an amoeba, and that will satisfy his mind. But he stops. He still will not admit that he stated that there was a non-organic substance or nothing, or something that was dead, out of which came life, out of which came something. He doesn't want to wrestle with that problem. So he leaves that, jumps over the pages of history, and comes to some little thing more complex. Then he teaches evolution from that state. But when he goes far enough back, he finds no answer for the appearance of life out of nothing or death. So here is the mystery. It comes by water and by blood. Not by water only, but by water and blood. This is the great mystery of the incarnation, the death, and the resurrection. What incarnation? What death and what resurrection? The mind instantly thinks in terms of 2,000 years ago, and we think that was the great mystery. But before I jump into the mystery, let me quote you the very last verse of this wonderful 5th chapter. Little children, keep yourselves from idols. No matter how officialdom justifies them and tells you this is the image of your Savior revealed through the minds of a saint or a great artist, you are warned in this chapter to keep yourselves free of idols, in harmony with the 2nd commandment. Thou shalt make no graven image unto the Lord thy God. No matter how it is justified by officialdom or orthodox society, you are asked, please, not to make anything external to your own mind and bow before it as creative power, for here he is trying to reveal the true creative power that is in man. It sleeps in man as his passive mind. As you unfold the mystery, it awakens from its passive state into its active state. And the birth of active mind is truly the resurrection of Christ in man. It is Christ in man. It is Christ in man that is the hope of glory. Now here is another verse. He gives you a test. He asks you to ask whatsoever thing in this world in my name, that the Father may give it to you. I hope you see where this is going already here. You already see what's about to happen, because you've been studying long enough in these lectures so far. There's been quite a many that have brought you to already understand and pre-idea what's going to happen next. He asks you to ask whatsoever thing in this world in my name, that the Father may give it to you. He did not restrict you to one desire. Ask whatsoever thing you desire in my name, and the Father will give it to you. Now, if you take it literally, as I have heard thousands of prayers in my own home, raised in a Christian atmosphere, we said grace at meals, and Mother invariably said it, and invariably ended with the words, "For Jesus' sake, amen." But nothing happened. We ate the food and enjoyed the food, and you will say prayers, long verbal appeals to God for something, always ending, "For Jesus' sake, amen," thinking that if I said it was for his sake, that I would thus tempt my Father to give it to me. For did he not say, whatsoever thing ye desire, ask in my name, and the Father will give it to you? Well, you ask it forever in that name and nothing happens. Therefore, he didn't understand the mystery. So what is the mystery? Even Jesus Christ, who came not by water only, but by water and the blood. We have put it into the most practical manner in the world, something out of nothing. Life out of death. Conceive of something you desire. Just think of it. The mere thinking of something, just thinking of something, man. Just think of it. That is a conception unaided by another. Now we're getting down to business. Neville, don't quit. Just thinking of something. You just conceived without the aid of another. You must understand what you just did. Yes, credit where credit is due. You've been doing this your whole life. You're already really good at it. You're already really good at it. We're just going to change the focus. We're going to wake up to it and go, oh. Is that not an immaculate conception? You knew no one in the formulation of your desire. You knew no one in the formulation of your desire. Now you intend to realize it. It is clear in your mind's eye, it is a holy conception. It is a virgin conception. Can you bring about that something that seemingly is not existing? It is non-existence. It is non-existent. It has no existence in fact. And embody it? Can you incarnate it? For this is the mystery of the incarnation that comes by water and blood. Here is a birth that could take place if I am willing to give it human parentage. I must give it human parentage. It cannot of itself be born, for unless I myself become it, it cannot be born. So I desire to be something other than what I am. Now, what is the water? The water is the great mystery, the great psychological truth that I must discover, which will enable me, if I accept it, to live a life according to that truth and give expression to my desire. For water is the truth, and the blood is the application of that truth. And if you weren't aware, inside of this physical thing, the sepulcher, this dome, there's a thing called a brain in there. If you weren't aware, it's housed in a sack of salt water, sodium, and water, a big bath in there. And if you also weren't aware, if you don't remember your biology class, you have a pump right in the center of your chest that cannot stop and will not stop. It don't quit. It's pumping the blood continuously. And the one organ that demands oxygen in that blood as a highest priority, besides the pump itself, by water and by blood. Where is your imagination? Where do we suppose it is? Where do we dream or imagine it must be? I think there was a belief that they thought at one time, and it's everywhere, we know that, but at one time they believed it was in your breath. Because when somebody would pass away, the last thing they would see was that last breath. So they would think, they thought, and it's okay if we still do, it doesn't make a difference. When the breath stops, that's when your being stops. So that's what they thought at one time. But by water and by blood makes, and don't get me wrong, every time you expel a breath, you're respiring. One of my favorite subjects. You perspire about a quart of water a day, and you respire about half a quart, somewhere in that neighborhood. You need a minimum of, no, I think it's a quart and a quart. Your breath is breathing out steam, which is water, and the capillaries of your lungs is blood. Your whole system, by water and blood here, by water and blood here. When you imagine you're using water and blood all the time, your whole function, your whole system is by water and by blood. I'm getting into the literal side of it for fun, but water is psychological truth. The blood is action. He's about to describe that, I believe, so we're going to get into it. Now, what is the water? The water is the great mystery, the great psychological truth that I must discover, which will enable me, if I accept it, to live a life according to that truth and give expression to my desire. For water is the truth, and the blood is the application of that truth. I could know everything in the world to be known of the mystery, but never live by it. Still continue to live as I have always lived, passively accepting the evidence of my senses as fact, accepting the dictates of reason as my guide. I could overhear a conversation or could read it in a book or hear it in a place like this on Sunday morning. That if you desire something intensely and you truly desire it, and you have a clear mental picture of what you would like to be or what you would like to accomplish, or what you would like another friend to realize, you know exactly what you would like in this world. Now, this is the water by which it could be born. But it cannot be born of water only. It must be born of water and blood. So I will give you the water. When you know what you want, you make as vivid and as lifelike a representation of what you would see, of what you would hear, and what you would do were you physically present and physically moving about in such a situation. To take an example, suppose I desired a certain apartment or home or business. Take one so you will not be confused. We will take an apartment. But reason tells me I cannot afford it. Reason tells me I haven't enough furniture for so big an apartment. Reason tells me 1,000 things that would deny that I could ever realize it, but I would still like it. Now, this is what I would give you in the form of water. For something must come out of nothing and life out of death. To embody that state, I make it real. You pull it seemingly from a state that is non-existent, therefore something out of nothing. To make it real and to incarnate it and to become alive to it and it to you, you are pulling life out of death. You're literally animating. Now, this is what you do. There is a death involved, but it is not the kind of death that men call death. There is a death. There's a radical change of state of mind. You completely give up the belief that you are not living in such a place. That is irrational. But that is what you are called upon to do, to completely deny the evidence of your senses and to boldly assume that you are already in that state that you occupy. There you dwell in a state that reason denies. You dwell in an assumption that your senses deny. That is not just the water. If you do it, you are applying the blood. If you are told to do it and you are given the truth, for it will work. That water, if you could only add the blood to it, will bring the invisible state into the visible world. And what seemingly is non-existent will crystallize and harden into fact. But if you only know it as too many of us know it, and think of it the mere knowledge is enough, we will come here on Sunday and thoroughly enjoy this wonderful hour, the music, the message, the meditation, the feeling of companionship you find here, and the whole thing is a thrill for an hour. But such knowledge cannot bring Christ Jesus to birth. In this state, Christ Jesus, now I'll analyze it for you. On a lower plane, the word Jesus, in Hebrew, Jeshua, means salvation, to save. So if I desire something and I don't realize it, then I simply continue a life of frustration. If I realize my objective, I have been saved from frustration. Take a simple matter. Suppose I wanted a suit of clothes because I was in the need of raiment. Raiment is a term in the Bible, in Scripture, that means, like a gown, clothing. If I don't realize the suit of clothes, I am not saved from my nudity. If I realize the suit of clothes, I have been saved. For this is an all-inclusive Savior, not just a man. If I wanted water, literal water, a lecture will not quench my thirst. If I wanted food, literal food, the most wonderful revelation would not actually satisfy my hunger. So Jesus is all-inclusive, meaning everything you desire. He is it, because if you embodied that desire, you embodied your Jesus. Now, to embody Jesus, he cannot be embodied by the knowledge of what to do only. He can only be embodied by the application of that knowledge. So the knowledge of what to do is called water, the water of truth. But the use of that lovingly is called the flowing, shedding of the blood. So here we find the symbols that always accompany birth, that which is presented in this mystery. You are told the limit is within you. You make the limit, there is no limit. Whatsoever you desire, ask in my name. For name simply means nature. If I wanted to be in a house and to feel that I am the occupant of that house, there is a certain feeling, a certain nature that goes with it. I must appropriate it as though it were true. Here I am called upon to bring something alive out of a state that is dead. For if I told you what I have done, you would question my sanity, and you would feel I am trying to give expression to something that is being pulled out of nothing. For you cannot see it. You don't see me in the house. You don't see me actually occupying and enjoying the life that you know I desire to enjoy. So if I persist in that assumption, to you, if you should know my persistence, you might think I am headed towards a form of insanity. But if tomorrow the house becomes an embodied fact and I, the occupant, then you look at it passively and you will still try to justify it by tracing its appearance back to a visible cause. You will see that in some way unknown to you, my resources were lifted up, that in some way I became more eligible for that house, and you will trace it back to a change in my fortune. You will trace it back to a change in something in my world. But you won't trace these changes back to the unseen assumption in which I dwell. So as the mystic tells us in Hebrews 11, things unseen were not made of things that do appear. Man refuses to accept it, so he takes everything in his world and tries to take it back to some visible cause, even with the aid of his microscope. He takes the microscope and he will peer through it to prove his own satisfaction, to prove to his own satisfaction there is a visible, tangible cause, or he goes off into space with his telescope. He must find in the outer world causes of the changes in the outer world. It's so simple. It's right there on your body. He cannot believe that the whole vast outer world is held together from within. And if we are only on the surface looking at it from without, trying to analyze it and to understand it from without, and all that appears without, though it seems there, it isn't. It is all from within. All within the mind of man. And that is the mystery. So do not make an idol, no matter who makes you the idol, no matter what holy man tells you this is a wonderful thing that will bless you. There is no blessing in states on the outside. Bow to nothing on the outside. We have wondered why throughout the centuries a certain race of people did not become greater sculptors, greater artists in the form of painting, great religious leaders. There is no blessing in states on the outside. Bow to nothing on the outside. There was a Seth quote where he said, the gods don't come kneeling, so you shouldn't kneel either. It means the same thing. Maybe they were really taking the second commandment very, very seriously. Make no graven image, not one unto me. Make nothing that is graven, that is objective, as image of your Father that is free, for I am spirit. If you were to worship me in spirit and in truth, but not in anything that you can turn to on the outside and bend the knee before, whether it be a church, a synagogue, or some statue that just hangs upon your wall. He is not there. He is in your mind. He is housed within you. There is the living God within the temple, and the temple is man. Ye are the temple of the living God. Again, it's summarized in the Seth quote, the gods don't come kneeling, so you shouldn't kneel either, saying the same thing that said right there. Non-scripturally, of course. Jane wouldn't have scripture, remember. Jane Roberts, that is, of the Seth material. She didn't want to have a teacher speaking through her talk anything about scripture. Neville did it wonderfully, towards the end of Neville's period, Jane Jane Roberts and Robert Butts then started to channel Seth, the teacher known as Seth. Started in 1963, they communicated, which is the same year of these particular lectures. Then they started, I forget the first book, Seth Material. It's called The Seth Material, was the first book. That's not a channeled book, that's a Jane Roberts book, her first book on the subject of the Seth Material, called the same name. And it's like one teacher left off and one teacher carries the ball a little farther, just in a different verbiage. Some of us are okay with Scripture. When I studied the Seth Material, I wasn't okay with Scripture. I wouldn't have this. I wouldn't take this 1 foot, 1 inch, 1 millimeter. I would not accept learning this way until after that entire body of work, coupled to almost 3 decades of that, of the Seth Material and application of it and teaching it and being it and literally reaching Zen states in it, getting out of the official line of consciousness, being on amazing highs that you can't even imagine, learning the out-of-body travel, the lucid dreaming, and all this wonderful stuff, and that entire body of work, then to discover the Neville Material, and it happens to include Scripture, and it's such a reconciling. It's such a reconciliation of that wonderful instruction manual that we call the Bible. We just didn't look at it with a certain perspective. Now, I'm sure, and Seth did say to Jane one particular moment, he said to her, you can have the Christ book whenever you want it. Or he said, you can have the Christ book if you're ready, or when you're ready. He said something to that exact effect. And she still denied, because it would have literally said the same. I'm certain, after studying all the Seth, every single word. I have binders over here you wouldn't even believe of back then, where they would copy manuscripts and copies of manuscripts, copies of the ESP class sessions. I have so much stuff, but that's how deep I studied it all. I've read every single word, and I know that book, if Seth would have dictated, it would have been a total reconciliation with this Neville Goddard material. I feel it would have been a perfect, like a key in a lock. It would have fit each other that perfectly. In my analysis, coming at this, as I just described, that many decades of Seth, Jane, and Rob information here, basically becoming a scholar of that material and the application of it, and then come into the Neville and see it lights up within me, and now I can see how that instruction manual, what it really means, and to look through scripturally, makes complete and total sense. It makes total sense. So I'm giving you a hindsight as a benefit here. I'm trying to help you, if you're watching this, get there quicker. Just become faster, quicker. If you're here for the law, great. Let's take the law to the nth degree. If you're here for the law and the promise, great. Let's use the law, make our lives better, and then also unveil the promise. Become. Unravel the great mystery and understand it, and then be it. Consciously. That's our goal together. Consciously. Ye are the temple of the living God. So when I speak of the water and the blood, I speak not of the things that you can see with the eye, such as water and blood. They are only symbolized functions of the mind, and the function first comes with water. I must first know what to do before I can do it. So water comes first. He takes water and puts it into a stone jar, gives it something like a shape, and from that stone jar filled with water, he draws not water, but he converts it. He draws wine. Wine is a symbol for blood. So here is the first miracle. I know what to do. I take this little world of mine that is one, and then I extract from it something that is not seen. Not quite as hard as that, I call it water. I see something bringing all this into being. I know how it's brought into being. That a man living in luxury is not to be judged harshly because he has it and you haven't it. He is living in a state of consciousness that solidifies in the form that you see now and call luxurious. One in a state of health, one who is recognized, one who is accomplished, one who is contributing much to the world, don't judge them. They are states made visible. Find out if you can get into a similar state. He is not occupying the only state in the world. There are infinite states. And if you try even to duplicate that state, if it can be duplicated, or you can get close to it, or you can transcend it, in parentheses, find out within your own mind's eye what you want. Find out what you want. First priority, number one, the highest priority. What is it that you want? Don't be envious of him. Leave him alone, for he is applying the law. This other person who happens to be in wealth or health or luxury, whatever it is. Let him alone, for he is applying the law. We're trying to do this consciously. That's why you must know what your desire is, because we're going after this consciously, not unconsciously. Not that the world's happening to us, because it actually is not. We're going after it because we are happening to it. We just weren't aware. Now we are becoming aware, and we will happen to it consciously. Don't be envious of him. Leave him alone, for he is applying the law. He is entitled to everything in this world that he can actually conceive and desire and put himself into and live it. For man is living in an infinite world of invisible states, and an individual wisely or foolishly occupies a state. I am going to step right up and say, I know many, many, many states I have foolishly occupied. Recklessly, foolishly occupied. Was I at fault? No, I was learning. While he remains faithful to the state will externalize and become the circumstances and the conditions of his life. The moment he detaches himself in consciousness from that state, the things that he enjoyed before vanish from his world. Now, if everything in my world depends upon a state of consciousness, it would be the height of insanity to seek the thing before I actually fix within myself the state on which the thing depends. For that which requires a state of consciousness to produce its effect cannot be effected without such a state of consciousness. So when I know what I want, to support that, there is an invisible state of consciousness. This is the same concept as those lottery winners. Remember the one I mentioned many videos ago, Jack Whitaker. Jack Whitaker had a net worth of approximately 12 million. Construction business he owned. He was already well enough to do, didn't need a hassle with what happened next. I want to say it was somewhere, he won a lottery ticket as the individual winner, somewhere on the order of about 315 million, 314 million. And I believe he went through a radical change in his world by continuously looking on the outside and not changing the consciousness of what was within, or not even ever looking at it as a concept. He went after it all wholly on the outside, throwing money at this, throwing money at that, going to the strip clubs, dropping $5,000, taking in the bar $50,000 and setting it on top of the bar, spending it on all the girls in the bar. His daughter gets hooked on drugs because he's giving her money all the time as a gift. He doesn't realize all this is not on the outside, it's on the inside. She has all this money, she starts buying friendships. She starts buying friends on the wrong side of things and starts getting addicted to drugs, doing drugs, then addicted to drugs, gets caught up in a crack and methamphetamine and all this stuff, ends up dying from overdose of that. I want to say it was Jack's wife also died during this whole process of money madness. He ends up getting to a place, he's carrying $500,000 in his car. He's talking about it in the bar. Somebody goes out and breaks into the car, takes the briefcase with $500,000 in it. He is not taking a conscious approach to the understanding of wealth or money. He was coming at it. He was like, you handed him a thing, but he didn't understand the thing. Consciously. Within. So he did what anybody would do in that circumstance. Without conscious awareness, without consciously being wealthy here, you can't be it out here. And he had handed him something on the outside that he didn't go into the meaning of inside. A great angel of a human being. You have to appreciate his lesson that we get to learn from. And there's a lot more where that came from in the stories of lottery winners. But that the main point being is that if it's inside, then it becomes without, because that's how this works. But if it's outside, it can't just become within. His story is a fine example of that. Watch any biography on him. Jack Whitaker, lottery winner. Wonderful man. Wonderful granddaughter. Wonderful wife. I believe daughter, of course. I forget the details, but it's a great story. It's a sad story, but it is a very important story in this line we're on right now. We want to create a new reality for ourselves. We become it in our consciousness. Then it becomes without. We want it. We conceive it. We believe it. We achieve it. Napoleon Hill, that does have an effect here. So when I know what I want to support, so when I know what I want to support that, there is an invisible state of consciousness. The world calls that invisible state a non-existing nothingness. They cannot even call it a thing, for to them it has no existence, no reality. That is the mystery, a self-begotten child conceived unaided by another and carried faithfully in the womb of God, which is the mind of man. It was placed there without the aid of another by man's desire. That was the Immaculate Conception. That's the virgin conception. Now, the virgin birth. Can I bring it from its invisible state and really make it a tangible fact within my world? Try it. As you try it with one thing and you succeed, you will try it with 2 and 4 and 8 and so on. And eventually the sleeping giant in man, which is the Son of God in man, called Christ, will awaken. And that's in you. He will awaken by moving from the passive state to the active state. The passive state is simply the complete and utter surrender of man to appearances to live, believing that life is on the outside. And he moves from that state where he surrenders and believes all these things to be causes to the active state, where he puts everything in subjection to that something within himself, which is his awakened imagination. He imagines a thing to be so, he persuades himself that it is so, and walks faithful in his assumption. Then you will know why in Romans 14 he tells us that every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. Don't persuade her, leave her alone. You persuade yourself of the changes you desire expressed in her. If you desire a change in your relationship at home or in business, you don't argue, you don't persuade them. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. So, can I persuade myself that you are as I desire to see you? Then, to the degree that I can persuade myself, you will conform in the outer world to that persuasion. If I hope to see changes there, before I myself will start the change on the inside, the chances are I will hope in vain. He is really hitting hard, right between the eyes here. I mean, really, really, really good stuff right here. Pay very close attention. You yourself may desire certain changes, and I might see them change in my world, but they were not caused because I moved into an active state. I am still reflective, and most of us in this world are reflecting life. And the purpose of a church of this nature is to make us not reflect, but to affect life. If I affect, then Christ is awakened within me. If I only reflect it, then I sleep with Adam. And the purpose is to move from the sleep of Adam to the wakefulness of the Son of God called Christ. Adam too is called the Son of God, but in a state of profound sleep. But he moves from that state of sleep, or the passive state of mind, to the active state. Will be no nearer the proving of it than you are now. But if you took a little bit, one drop of this water, and went out even to disprove it, in order to disprove it, you must seriously and sincerely try it. If you try it, you won't disprove it. You will be encouraged to drink more water, and still more, and bring about this birth of your Savior, and you decide what will save you today from your present predicament. It may be a job, it may be an increase of funds, it may be companionship, it may be something, I don't know. But whatever it is that you this day desire, and unless you get it, you feel thwarted, you feel frustrated, then it would save you if you got it. Now take that as your Savior. Look into your mind's eye and see it clearly. It may seem almost sacrilegious to the orthodox mind to tell you that when you see clearly in your mind's eye the state desired, either for self or another, you are actually looking into the face of Jesus. For you are seeing the state that could save you from where you are or what you are. Let's do that again. Let's go into a mini silence right here. Let's see. Look into your mind's eye and see it clearly what state you desire this day. What would save you if you got it? Let's go ahead and close our eyes if you're not driving. See yourself in that state. What is that state? What is the activity you're involved in? Who are you talking to? Talk to them right now. Shake hands. Hug. Okay. You just conceived it. You just looked into the face of Jesus. For you are seeing the state that could save you from where you are or what you are. So you try it and the mind will expand. You will find yourself not only increasing in this world, in the outer world, but you will find mystical revelations taking place within you, which is the purpose of the teaching. It is not just to bring about changes in the inner that man ascends on higher levels of consciousness. Your dreams are going to change. Just that one exercise we just did, that one. Your dreams are going to change. Be ready. It's okay. You want them to change. Wouldn't the new man that you just saw yourself in and being have different dreams? Of course. Different motivations? Of course. The purpose of the whole appearance is to awaken from the lowest descent on the ladder to the highest. He is ascending to the highest, for we are told in the vision of Jacob, above it all stood God. On the ladder stood these heavenly beings ascending and descending. But above all stood God. So the real destiny of man is to reach the height that he may awaken as God. So the mystery is, God became man, that man may become God. He came down as man. Take the same verse and give it a higher interpretation. So here God died, yes, died, to become man. See, my new vision of that is that the moth wanted to be the flame so much that he gave himself to be the flame. That's the same image I see when I read that God here died to become man. It's the same thing. He wanted to be us so much that he died to become us. That's the way I see it now, since that one video way back. I was sitting here writing on the board, and it just dawned on me completely that is what happened. The moth into the flame is the same, that God so died to become us. So here God died, yes, died to become man. The death of God is complete forgetfulness of the fact that he is God. He had to completely forget that he is God. Therefore died to awaken as man. If he remembered he was God, he just couldn't be as man. But a complete and utter death, which is forgetfulness that I am God, to become man. So the poet wrote it beautifully and said, God became man, that man may become God. He said, unless I die, you could not live, but if I die, I shall arise again, and you with me. Then he goes on to ask a man, could you love one who had never died for thee, or could you die for one who had not died for thee? And so he is putting this into the most wonderful poetical mystery in the book, Jerusalem, by Blake. He reveals to the mind who can see it that you who believe yourself because you are visible and you must do what man passively must do, he traces your origin back to a germ. As long as you began as a germ, you are no more than a big germ. People go and pay big tuitions to learn that in minute detail, and then call themselves educated. You don't need that. You can create everything from right here. The whole idea of going to university is to get to the place where you then develop a career, manifest for yourself a wonderful life, wealth, success, etc. Well, it starts here anyway. For those of you at a certain age, it's all here. What would be the priority to know, to understand, to realize, to be, to practice? Watch your world unfold with whatever you want. I would think that would be a higher priority than to go learn that you were a germ and are just a germ, but that's just me. If you begin as something else, you are only something enlarged of the same thing. For all ends run true to origins. If I take you back where you cannot see it, and take you back to the great mystery that you are actually begotten of God, if your origin is God, your end is God. If your origin is a bug, then your end is a bug. So you have the choice. The passive mind, which is really the scientific mind, the passive mind must still exist on finding causes external to itself. It cannot find causes in that passive state within itself. I tell you, the great mystery is that you came out of a seeming death. It is a death. God died to become man because he desired the companionship of men as gods. As the poet told us, man should not stay a man. His aim should higher be. For God will only gods accept as company. So you cannot, in your present state of the passive mind, be companions of your Father, who longs and desires that every son, every child, awakens to become companions of deity. So to do it, he had to die as God, and became his creation in the hope that the creation would awaken and become his companion. Remember, from pure at heart, David's looking for a home. He's looking for his home. I previously described in my beginning readings that we are trying to return home. But actually, we are there already. David's trying to find his home in us. Once he calls us Father, individually, we know he is home and we are home. We are companions. So to do it, he had to die as God and became his creation in the hope that the creation would awaken and become his companion. But you see, he gave us such a gift. He completely freed me of the responsibility of returning. I don't have to awaken. I am as free as the wind. He gave me complete freedom of will. I may hurt myself, ruin myself, but because of the gift of God to me, to make me alive, he cannot interfere and make me awake. You can deny all you want. You can have the mystical experiences. They can be as bright as any bright TV on the wall. You can really understand them and you can still deny. It's your freedom. Complete freedom he gave you. He may appeal through awakened children, and they may appeal to their sleeping brother. But they cannot, by the same law, interfere and make me awake. I can't make you awake. All I'm doing right here in this interchange is holding the lantern. All I am doing right here. They can only appeal and try in some subtle way to suggest, but the gift was absolute. God gave himself to become me, finding myself, man. I think my origin was man, so my destiny, no matter how big a man I become, no matter how wise a man, it will still be a man. But if my origin is God, my destiny is God. And I will awaken one day to discover this wonderful, unfolding mystery within me. By water and by blood. June 24, 1956. Let's go into the silence. I hear the birds singing where I am. I know they're there telling me something, just like Neville said. I believe the sun's out outside. I can't tell because we've had rain and it was raining this morning. But by the sound of those birds singing, I believe the sun is out or the sky is blue now because we've had the end of this rain. Okay. Homework. 2 minutes of silence on your own. Give conception to that man or woman you see yourself as being. And we're going to see you in the next one. Neville Goddard, 1956 lectures. Feed my sheep. July 1st, 1956. Feed my sheep. This morning's subject. This is simply saying, practice the truths you have heard, for it means to shepherd the thoughts of the mind. For most of us, our thoughts are like rambling sheep that have no shepherd. We are called upon now to rule the thoughts, to rule the mind. As you know, the kingdom of heaven is as a man starting into a far country, and he calls unto himself his servants and gives them his property, his goods. To one he gives 5 talents, to another he gives 2, and to another he gives 1. Every man according to his several ability. And when he returned, he asked for a reckoning. The one who had 5 traded and produced another 5. He was highly commended and told he was faithful over a few things. He would now be ruler over many. The one who had 2, he too traded and produced 4. and he too was highly commended and told to enter into the joy of the Lord. But the one who had one was afraid because his master, so he thought, was a hard man. And so he buried his talent in the earth and did not expand it. But I think you know the story. He was condemned for his misuse of the talent. It was taken from him and given to the one who had the most, the one who had 10. Well, now you have received talents in the last few days or weeks, each one according to his ability. Some of us came with more prejudice to overcome, with more superstition. Some with other beliefs that did not quite coincide with what we heard from the platform. And many of us had to overcome certain things before we could accept others. So some got 1 talent, some 2, some 5, some maybe more. Now a talent that is not exercised, like a muscle that is not exercised, finally sleeps. And as far as we are concerned, it atrophies. It doesn't really die, but it goes to sound asleep. It might just as well not be part of ours. We must practice what we have heard, for without practice, the most profound understanding in the world will not produce the desired results. So a little talent, call it a talent now, if you really expand it, if you exercised it, will be far more profitable than many talents that you do not exercise. This morning we will take 1 or 2 of the talents that we offer you. I can't force them upon you. We offer you. Here is a statement from the book of Amos. I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as corn is sifted in a sieve, yet not the least grain fall upon the earth. I will sift him and scatter him all over the nations of the world, but not the least grain shall fall upon the earth. Do you know who Israel is? Who this Jacob is? The Israel means is real. Is real. You can't find it on earth. Don't look for it on the earth. And yet you must find him, for formed him in the womb to be my servant and to bring Jacob, which is Israel, again unto me. Isaiah 49:5. So you and I were formed from the womb to be the servant and to bring Jacob unto the Lord. He is scattered all over the world, but you will not find him. No, not the smallest grain upon the earth. But you will find him within yourself, for the cue is given in Jacob. Jacob is the smooth-skinned lad. He is not like his brother Esau, who has hair, which means something external. So the Israel you are looking for this day is the thing that you want to realize in the world. Do not look out and hope to find it, or even to be encouraged that you will find it by judging after the appearances of things. Do you seek health for a friend? That's Israel scattered, but not on earth. In all the nations of the world I have scattered the house of Israel, but do not look into the eyes of a doctor for hope. Do not look into the eyes of the patient for hope of his recovery, because you will find him on the earth. Not the least grain has fallen upon the earth. So do you know what you want in this world? If you know exactly what you want, where do you see it? You see it in the mind of yourself. So when you know what you want, here is a part of Israel scattered. And you didn't see him on earth. You saw him in the kingdom within you. For the kingdom of God is within. So you saw a piece of Israel. Now go bring him. I formed you from the womb to be my servant and to bring Jacob again unto me. You take the thing you have seen in the mind's eye, which to make it practical, we will think of as a friend in need. It may be physical need. Maybe he is unwell, or it could be he needs a job. Well, now you be the one who will decide what part of Israel you will bring to the Lord and prove to the Lord you are a perfect servant. For the premise is that when you prove you are the perfect servant, then you will no longer be called servant. He will call you his friend. I no longer call you servant, for now I call you friend, for you do whatsoever I command you, and therefore if you do that what I command you, you are no longer my servant, you are my friend. And now we will commune as a man to a friend, face to face. Another you has had this association for a while, and that is the purpose of it, to move from the servant to the friend. And after we become the friend of God for a while, then we turn to that of the Son. We no longer are the friend. We become his son, but we cannot recognize the sonship of God until we first prove ourselves as a servant. So the servant is to bring Israel, for example, imagine lovingly and believe in your imaginal activity. Now we come back to the friend in need. Represent him to yourself as though he now embodied the state you want him to realize in this world. If it is a job, see him gainfully employed. Take your imaginary hand, which is Jacob's hand, and put it into his imaginary hand. Okay, I'm going to do that right now. And by the way, the person I did this with about 3-4 videos ago, I was talking to yesterday, and he told me he is right there. He's next in line for getting picked up and doing some more work that he does. He said he's next. It's a phone call away. So he's right on the verge of it. So he's the one I keep imagining. And every time I listen to him, he's literally telling me what I imagined. And right now, yesterday's conversation was that he's next, which is good enough for me. But I'm going to give you a feedback and tell you what happens next. But I just used him in my imagining just now. If it is a job, see him gainfully employed. Take your imaginary hand, which is Jacob's hand, and put it into his imaginary hand. Leave it in that imagined state until it takes on. Leave it in that imagined state, right? Until it takes on the tones of reality. When it seems to you real that you are actually touching him, clothe it with all the reality of the external world, which is what I just did. Because I do this often, I know exactly what that feels like. So Jacob clothed himself in the skins of Esau to deceive his father into believing that he, Jacob, was Esau. So you take the Jacob within you, which is the smooth skin lad, which is simply now the wish. So when I was shaking his hand, hearing the good news, the God spell, that was Jacob. You want to congratulate him. You want to hear his voice, which is what I just did. You want to hear him tell you he has never been so happy in a job in his life. He has never been so gainfully employed. That he loves going to work. He just loves everything about his job. You actually hear him as though you heard him. Now you clothe it with all the tones of reality. If you have 2 talents, give it 2. If you have 5, give it 5. Begin to move it more and more real. The day will come, maybe this day, you will so clothe your Israel with the skins of Esau that you can actually bring it as an objective fact to your father and prove you are a servant. Now where I go, when I do my imagining, I do that 2-fold, 3-fold, 4-fold vision. I actually not just see the event I want to see, but I actually start to interact. There actually becomes a conception within the conception. There starts to be an interaction within the imagining. Not just the event, but even more so, even activity. For he formed you from the womb to actually be his servant. And what is the servant to do? To bring Jacob unto me again. So here Jacob is scattered, lost in all the minds of men. You won't find him on earth. You will only find him if you know where to look. Now, to prove you know where to look, to prove you are a good servant, go bring me Jacob. So when you bring Jacob clothed in your own mind's eye, as though you heard what you want to hear, as though you touched and you witnessed what you would like to touch and see in this world. And when you remain faithful to your vision, the vision will make for itself the perfect body in which to abide. Then you will see an objective corresponding fact, but it is not there. It is all within your own mind. It is there where he scattered it. It is there where he sustains it. He will simply project it for you onto the screen of space that you may have tangible evidence that you do know how to find and bring Jacob. If I know how to go searching for my Israel, if I know how to go looking for him and how to clothe him and give him the appearance of reality, and I don't do it, then I am not the good servant who took the 5 talents and expanded them. I am the one who buried it. You must understand what is being said here. You have quite a bit of responsibility to be at this level of awareness and not do it. Let me know how that works out. Don't let me know how that works out. Go with yourself. Go tell yourself in the mirror how it's working out. Not funny. Now, some of us are almost afraid to test it because we are comforted if we can believe this without quite putting it to the test. For if we put it to the test and we fail, then we have no faith. To me, the best thing about failure is failing fast. The faster I have failed at things, the sooner I knew how to do it better and or choose something else. I loved, at certain things at work, I loved failing fast. It gave me so much opportunity to go again. And it's such a win-win, but depending on how you see failure. It's good to fail so you can build faith. But here, for if we put it to the test and we fail, then we have no faith. We cannot go back to the former comfort that we enjoyed, say, in a more orthodox meeting. We thought we would find it here, and if I don't test it and prove it to my own satisfaction, then I have neither the old comfort of the orthodox concept, nor the comfort that I enjoyed here, for I disproved it. So I invite you to attempt, if you will, to disprove it. You can't disprove it, but if you go out knowing where to look for your Israel, knowing why you are fashioned from the womb to be a servant, that is the first stage. Until you test yourself, until you prove you can do it, you are not a servant of the Lord. But as you become a servant of the Lord, he will make you his friend. Then the relationship will be on a higher level. The Lord's right here. Servant of the Lord is just to imagine lovingly. You're serving the Lord. You're serving the Lord. Serving the Lord. You will commune with your Father as a man does with a friend, face to face. You will not see him as an object in space, but you will actually know how to bring about a wished-for state of mind. Bring about it at will. As you can bring about a wished-for state of mind, you have made of the deep, which is your Father, a friend, and you will actually know that companion between the deep of self and you, the being that is really a wonderful imagination. Then the day will come, having been a wonderful friend of God, the seal will be broken. And you will be revealed as the being you really are, which is the Son of God and the Father. Every person in the world is the child of God, believing itself to be a man born of man. Every person in the world is the child of God, believing itself to be a man born of man. I have tried in the past 2 weeks to convince you that your origin is God. It is not what the world would tell you, a little bug. For if you were a little bug, a little spermatozoa, though you seem to embody yourself and expand in the form of a man, your end will be a little spermatozoa, for all ends run true to origins. So whatever the origin, you can determine the end. I tell you, your origin is God. Therefore, your end is God. But to arrive at that end, you pass through the stages of the servant, then the friend, then God, which is the Son of God. For I and my Father are one, yet my Father is greater than I. Yes, I do not claim that this union, this oneness, entitles me to the same identical feeling of being Father. I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. For the thing symbolized that bears witness of this unseen state is not really as great as that which it symbolizes. So we are one, and I will know it, and I will see my Father and see that he and I look alike, yet we are father and son relationship. But before I can get near it, I must prove that I am a good servant. Now, you take it this morning. We invite you to try it for a friend. We ask you to try it for yourself. We have given you many angles how to test it, how to think of what you want first and see it in your mind's eye, Israel. For when I know clearly in my mind's eye what I want, I'm actually looking at Israel. Something that is real. It is real, but I must clothe it now in what the world calls reality by giving it external tones. But the thing was real long before it became a visible fact in the world. I see it in my mind's eye by making as vivid and as lifelike a representation as possible of what I would see and what I would do and what I would actually hear were I physically present in such a situation now. When I see it clearly, I'm looking into the eyes of Israel. And I found him scattered in the world, but not on the earth. For it is not on the earth that I see him. I see him in my mind. Now I'm looking at it and thinking of it, but the secret is to think from it, to occupy that state and get into it. When I get into it, I will clothe it with reality. I can think of a place and then close my eyes and assume that I am in that place. When I assume I am in that place, I am clothing it with what the world calls reality. It was real before I clothed it. When I saw it clearly, this was Israel. But he wants me to bring him, and the only way I can test that I can bring him and prove that I am the servant is to occupy the state. So I occupy the feeling of my wish fulfilled. When I get into the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain faithful to that state, then I am walking in my vision, and, as we are told, if we would only advance confidently in the direction of his dream and endeavor to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected. Let me remain faithful to my vision by occupying my vision. Don't just see it. You must be in it. He demands that I bring him. Bring Jacob again unto the Lord. So Jacob is not a man who walked the face of the earth thousands of years ago, and Israel is not a nation now gathered together on the shores of Africa. He scatters the house of Israel in all the nations of the world. You might have been taught to believe that the person who calls himself a Jew in the presence of a nation is scattered Israel. Don't believe it. Everyone in the world is that which actually contains and holds Israel. Israel is right here. As you think of something and desire it to be a reality in your world, you are seeing Israel. Now he wants you to bring him, and he wants you to prove that you can bring him and become the perfect servant of the Lord. Don't be afraid to be the servant. Become the perfect servant of God. And then become his friend, and then realize you are his son. Let us go out determined that we will take the requests brought in here this morning. There were 100 odd that came in, but there are many more. Maybe you do not know them. You can take them collectively, but you can take an individual friend, a member of your family, and decide this day you are going to bring about some blessing in the individual's life. You have it. You have the power to bless, for the power to comfort, for the power to confer reality on your wish for the friend is the power to bless that friend. If your friend is not well and you want the friend to be well, you simply assume that you and he or she are carrying on a conversation from a premise which you establish now, and the premise is that he or she never felt better in their lives. And you hear it and you witness it. Take your hand, your imaginary hand, and embrace them. Tell them what you feel about them. Actually feel it. And then you do nothing outwardly to make it so. For things that you are going to see are not made of things that do appear. So you do not prescribe anything for them. You do not change their physical diet. You don't offer any recommendation as to what they should do. You simply assume that they are already the embodiment of the state you desire for them. So you don't start prescribing. Leave that out completely. You simply walk faithful to your image of the friend, and you transform that image into your mind's eye. You do it and see if you can bring him, because if you can't do that and prove it to yourself, you have not yet proven you are a servant. Therefore, the relationship is far removed from you. Everyone must prove that he is first a servant, as we read in Isaiah 49. I formed you from the womb to be my servant and to bring Jacob again unto me. Then I am told, even though Israel is not altogether gathered, I am blessed. The individual who does it, he doesn't have to bring the whole body of Israel. If he brings Jacob, one individual transformed, and proves he can transform him, he is blessed and receives glory long before the body of Israel is collected and brought back. So here you wonder, why is he called the King of Israel? Why is he called the King? People thought it meant a man who looked out upon a small little nation and thought he was king, or they thought he was king. Or even in irony when they said it, he isn't that. The individual who becomes a son is truly king of the whole vast world of Israel, or of the ideas floating in the mind of man. For he is their shepherd. He is their king. He can command any idea to clothe itself in form. That is the King of Israel, the King of Israel. That is the one that can make real a state that is only a wish. Is real, is the true Israel. Here, long before we became that lifted up, we must start to discipline the mind to become the perfect servant. This is why, and I dealt with this heavily in my manifestation journey, learning Neville, learning to consciously manifest. This is a major, what appears to be a stumbling block. For me, it felt like I was able to manifest for others, but not for myself. I was doing for others all over the place, for the homeless, for my sisters and brothers, etc., all down the line, seeing success after success after success after success, but not seeing it here. Seeing it everywhere else, but not seeing it here. And it's right here. That is the King of Israel. That is the one that can make a state that is only a wish. Israel is the true Israel. Here, long before we become that lifted up, we must start to discipline the mind to become the perfect servant. A servant that would be for others. That would be where you prove yourself. There's no better time to start than now. If you are afraid to try it, then I wouldn't know what to tell you, because in this place, you must test it. They do not have a religion where you just come here and sit on Sundays and gather together and form a nice little friendship this way. This is not that kind of religion at all. This is all to awaken the mind of man and make him a shepherd, make him something that rules. In fact, the very word translated feed in John 21 is translated many times in the Bible as shepherd, as rule. In Matthew 2, one shall come from Bethlehem, he shall have dominion over Israel. Well, in that one, he shall rule Israel. The word translated rule is the same word translated in John 21 as feed. So don't take it literally. It simply means to take this mind of yours and discipline the whole mind by gathering things together and walking faithful to an invisible state. For Jacob is invisible. You thought he was a man who was a smooth-skinned lad. That is the way the mystic has of telling you this is a subjective state, and that you must learn to clothe it with objectivity. You walk faithful to the you walk faithful to the subjective state. And then in time it takes on the tones and the appearance of something external. The moment you detach your mind from that state, though at the moment of detachment it had some corresponding external witness, it will begin to fade. If you detach your mind from success in the midst of success, success as a reality outside of you fades and vanishes from your world. And then whatever you put your mind on, it takes the place of. Proving success was not on the outside, it was within you. You clothed it for a moment and gave it the appearance of reality. But the day you are not faithful to the consciousness of being successful, the seeming solid reality of success vanishes from your world, proving itself to be the shadow it always was, and the reality. The light of success was the idea in you with which you were identified. So, if I assume that I am blank space and I name it, that's the blank space, name it. So if I assume that I am and I remain faithful to it, it comes out and makes itself seemingly real. If I cease to assume it and sustain it, it slowly vanishes from my world. And if it vanishes, I might think the reality was there. I have forgotten how to bring Jacob. I have forgotten how to bring him to the Lord. So here, let us remember where Israel is. It's not in the Near East. I just realized I might have misinterpreted when I saw those three guys and I was signing a contract and there was a lot of money involved and I was going to pass everybody up, I thought I was supposed to, on a motorcycle, I thought I was supposed to, this has been bugging me for several days since I revealed this again. It's been bugging me that I thought I was supposed to go to the northeast. Let us here remember where Israel is. It's not in the Near East. Israel is scattered in all the nations of the world. In your mind, that is where he is. I was translating what I was interpreting in that vision to be the northeast. I must go to the Near East. I must go to Israel. I must go and bring Jacob to the Lord and make Israel. Make it Israel. That's how these interpretations go. You got to play with them. You got to juggle them around and go, what does that mean? Northeast, and pass everybody and win the race? Fight the fight? See the baby? Whew. And now you have a purpose in this world, and if you really love the teaching, as the words are, lovest thou me, you say you are faithful. Peter, do you love me? He doesn't call him Peter, by the way, he calls him Simon. He never calls him Peter in any parts of the Bible. He is referred to as Peter, but whenever he is addressed by the central figure of the Gospels, he always calls him Simon. And Simon means to hear, it means to listen. Well, have you heard? Have you really heard, Simon? Yes. Then do you love what you heard? Then do you love what you have heard? Lovest thou me, or what I have told you that I am? I am the thing that I teach. So do you love me? Then feed my sheep. Become ruler of this mind of yours and prove you really love the thing you tell me you have heard. If you have heard it, then you are Simon. And if you have really heard it to the point of acceptance, prove you have accepted it by taking the talent received and expand it. Don't let the shepherd come, and when he asks you for the talent, you say you were afraid and you buried it. Let us not be afraid to actually test the truth of the principles we try to explain here. So all these are our truths that we have accepted. Now, some got 1, some 2, some got 5. We have done our best in the past 2 weeks to give you all that we could within 2 weeks, unfolded from the Bible. We showed you the Bible as a mystery, that all your members are buried, not in one little book, but in all the books. They are all telling you the story about yourself. How God became you, that you may become God. How God died to become man in the sense of forgetting that he was God, so he awoke as man. Man walking the earth has no knowledge he is God. And the individual who dares to claim that he is and tells you that you are is usually condemned by those who appoint themselves as teachers. Repeating, man walking the earth has no knowledge he is God. And the individual who dares to claim that he is and tells you that you are is usually condemned by those who appoint themselves as teachers. That is the blind leading the blind, and they will call you arrogant if you dare to even demonstrate the power of the mind. And they will tell you that's not right. You are taking back from God the thing that belonged to God. You see, they are sound asleep. They don't realize that God became man for one purpose, that he may have the companionships of the sons as gods. That he may have the companionship of sons as gods. So man must awaken and realize who he really is. And he realizes that by starting first as a servant. I have given you, I think, a perfect technique to prove that you are a servant. Try it today. If you succeed in the simplest little way of taking an invisible state and making it become a reality, like the job for a friend, or even the getting of a hat, or even the finding of a proper apartment, or even the getting of some little thing, you try it. If you lost something, nothing is lost in all my holy mountain. Now, I'm working on something here with that one. I'm working on something, and I can only tell you that because I'm going to share with you, because it's not lost. If you lost something, nothing is lost in my holy mountain, saith the Lord. So I want you, let's have fun with this. What you're going to expect hearing from me is me showing and telling you what was once lost but is now found. So if you can have that expectation, you're sharing with me, Jacob. We're bringing Jacob. If you lost something, nothing is lost in my holy mountain, saith the Lord. For if it isn't lost, it is scattered now in Israel. Prove that it isn't lost. What is it that you have lost? Well, take it in your own mind's eye, and then mentally touch it and mentally appropriate it and feel that you have it, that it is yours now. And remain faithful to that assumption and see if the thing returns. Now, I've just started working on this within a day or two. We will see together. If the thing is recovered, you have proved that you have found Israel, a portion of him anyway. And you know how to take him and clothe him in such tones of reality that you can bring him to the Lord. For the Lord is your own wonderful consciousness. When you say, I am, that is the Lord. Go tell them, I am hath sent you. So when you walk in the feeling, I am so-and-so, it is not seen as yet, but it is not seen as yet. But that is something you are bringing to the Lord. And the more you feel it to be real, the more natural it becomes. Then it clothes itself in external facts. But the external fact is not the truth of it. Remember that. The external fact is not the truth of it. Truth and fact oppose each other. Truth does not depend on fact. Truth depends on the intensity of your imagination. Therefore, if I actually am intense about it, that is true. I might tomorrow find a corresponding fact to bear witness, but, as I said earlier, let me not continue in that assumption, and the fact will fade, proving it was not reality at all. Reality was in my assumption. And so truth depends not upon fact, but upon the intensity of imagination. Then you will understand the drama when truth faces what is called fact or reason. And when asked, what is the truth? Truth remains silent. He would not answer because fact or reason thinks that a true judgment must conform to the external reality to which it relates. If I say, aren't these lovely? And I mention something that no one present can see, you say my judgment isn't true, for if it isn't on something on the outside, then what I say has no reality. I must be suffering from some illusion. If I persist in it and you cannot see it, then it is hallucination. But I know from experience that I can take an illusion, and through the medium of an illusion, I can relate myself to reality, or is real, by walking faithful to what you call my illusion. I simply assume a state knowing I have found it. If Knowing I have found it, I simply assume a state, knowing I have found it. It is scattered in the nations of the world, and finding it in myself as a desirable state, I appropriate it. Walking faithful to my appropriated state, I gradually become it. Disentangling myself from that state eventually, I cease to be it. For that which requires a state of consciousness to embody itself cannot be embodied without such a state of consciousness. When I know that the whole thing depends upon my appropriation of the parts of Israel to bring Jacob to my father, then I will start to do it. And then my talents will run 5 to 10 to 20. And finally, when I have all these talents, I will be worthy of being a friend. When I have been faithful in a few things, he will make me lord over much. Then he will tell me, I no longer call you servant. I call you friend, for you did what I commanded you. Now, having done what I commanded you, you are my friend indeed. We will walk in that association for a while, communing with the deep, knowing the deep of self is my real being that men call God. I won't see him as another. I will commune with him as though he were another, and he and I will talk across that invisible state just as though man spoke face to face with a friend. Just like imagining lovingly. For after this invisible state, when I commune with the deep, is reached to a point of complete satisfaction, the last seal will be broken. He will break the seal and reveal me as his son. And when I see him and look into his face, and he will be just like me, and I will be like him, then you will know the mystery of the epistle of John. Beloved, what manner of love? Just imagine what love God has bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. And then, although at this moment that I feel it from the deep, I don't quite know what I am like or what he is like, yet I do know this much, that when I see him, I will know him. And why will I know him? Because I will be like him. I will look right into the mirror of my own being and realize it was for that purpose that I, the Father, embodied myself as man, hoping that eventually he would awaken and become a conscious being, moving completely from a passive reflector to a conscious cooperator in my kingdom. So man gradually moves from the passive state to the active state. And the process is the servant, the friend, the son. Oh my goodness. Let us go into the silence. Feed my sheep. If you're not driving, your eyes are closed. You're imagining yourself as the being you imagine yourself to be, fulfilling the desire, your desire. You are in that state. What is it you feel in that state now as the person you are? Not you were, that you are. Remember, cowboys and aliens. God doesn't care who you were. He only cares who you are. Okay. We're going to see you in the next one.